So this is the title of my talk. It's about learning how to learn. How do you actually plan your study so that you have time to relax, time to exercise, and all this stuff? Okay? So I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that, but actually, how do you actually do it? Now, the techniques I'm going to tell you, they're all well documented and they're well researched. And in fact, those research are very new. Okay, they just published in 2013, 14, 15 actually. All right. Although what I'm going to tell you, or the techniques that have been published and known to be very effective, are techniques that I've been using since 1969, when I was in grade 7. Yeah. I'm old. I taught Dr. Lye when he was in term 2, imagine. I was 15 years old then. So. Anyway, don't need to know too much about me. I'm Associate Dean in Grad Studies currently. So I was Discipline Chair for Civil Engineering for 9 years. So I have helped a lot of students who are on the verge of failure kind of thing, and pull them back from the brink using these techniques. So hopefully this will be useful for you. So studying is a skill, and it's a skill that can be learned and needs to be taught, because not everybody knows how to study, right? You probably managed to get good marks when you're in high school. You might just remember stuff, without even paying attention too much. But when you need to study 5 subjects, or at one time 7, and there's a lot of work, you need to plan your time, right? So how do you do that actually? And when you are studying, how do you actually study? So that's what this talk is all about. And learning how to study effectively, of course, is critical to your success, right? So like I said, I'm going to talk about proven, effective techniques for studying. Not just my idea or something. It's not, okay? This is all research done by educational psychologists, cognitive psychologists, and people like that, right? So, and also, like I said, after reading all these articles, just so happened that I came across them, I said, geez, this is exactly what I was doing for so many years, right? And I have 2 kids, both in their 30s. They have multiple master's degrees, so they also use this technique since junior high school. So I think it's successful. So this kind of technique can be learned and be useful for you guys, for teachers, to teach your students, and for academic advisors as well. So, and it can be used for all situations, basically. Term tests, final exam, comprehensive exams, whatever you want. So I'm going to talk about proven techniques for studying, how to plan your study period, how to study, and also I will tell you what are the ineffective techniques. These are the techniques that are very common, in fact, surprisingly, right? And hopefully you won't use these techniques anymore. And also effective methods of taking notes, right? And also some useful techniques for changing your mindset so that you can study better. And this kind of tips usually helps you with understanding and also retention. Okay, so here starts. Okay, these are the actual mechanics of actually doing it. So I'm going to talk about 2 techniques. One is called distributive practice. It's just a fancy term, right? This is what the psychologists call it, distributive practice. Basically, it is studying in small blocks, spread over periods of time, intervals, right? It's called interval practice. For those of you who have been involved in sports, or coaching sports, or even playing piano or something, right? You go to lessons once a week normally, for half an hour, right, with your teacher. And then you go home and you practice. If you don't practice, your parents will scream at you, right? Because they pay big bucks when you go to lessons. And then you go for another lesson, you learn more stuff, and then you practice again, right? You don't go to a piano lesson once a month for 4 hours. Let's say, that's it for the month for 4 hours. And then you go home and don't do anything. And then you go for another 4 hours, don't remember anything, right? I mean, so studying is exactly the same. You have to practice on regular intervals, right? as opposed to what they call cramming or en masse studies. I think a lot of you do that. Oh, before the exam, you're going to study till 3 a.m. in the morning. Next morning, you couldn't get up, or you get up, you're half asleep, and you go to the exam, you don't remember anything. It's normal. A bad technique, right? Burning the midnight oil, they call it. Now, like I said, recent research, I put all these references in case you want to read them, in case you don't want to believe me, right? Has shown that distributed practice is one of the best methods to retain what you have studied. How to do that, I'll show you, right? Like I said, I've used this technique with my kids, I've used it myself, and I've saved many students in brink of failure, bring them back to life, right, kind of thing. So, using this technique, you know exactly when to study, what to study ahead of time, so that you have less stress, less anxiety, better retention, no panic, and also no need to burn the midnight oil. Sound like a salesman, right? So, in fact, somebody even composed a little poetry about that. He's a researcher at UBC. So, just as a picture, basically you study, you know, spread over an interval of time, right? Now, so some basic rules. The best thing to do is not to study for too long in one session. Okay? My suggestion is from 1 to 1.5 hours maximum. And then take a 15 minutes break, or maybe do 20 if you want. 15 is good enough between sessions. Go for a walk, get fresh air, exercise, do something, play with your dog or something. I'm sure your dog will be craving for attention by then. Okay? Stick to the plan for a week, especially when you're doing it for the first time, because you don't know whether you need to make adjustments. I normally don't study on Fridays at all. Friday night, I don't, kick back and relax. Saturday morning, Sunday mornings, I usually just go to the gym and, enjoy myself, right? I don't study. I exercise, of course. Now, another thing is, don't let homework distract from your study session. Sometimes you let homework you hijack your studies, study periods. Don't let that do that. Try to find other times to do your homework or schedule it in, right? So that it doesn't distract from your planned study period. Okay, I have handouts for you guys. Only 20 copies. I don't know how many are going to show up. So here I give an example, right? Let's say I need to take 5 courses. I chose those names just because it's going to be A, B, C, D, E, okay? So probably I don't know anybody going to do a degree with that kind of courses. Maybe liberal arts or something. But anyway, A, B, C, D, E, let's say. So that's the first thing to do. You need to list down what are the courses you're going to take. So obviously if you're an engineer, you know exactly what the 5 courses are. Next thing to do, you need to spend some time doing this, okay? And I'll make you an offer. If you have any problem with this technique, come and see me. Free of charge. Okay? No cost. So, you need to decide which course requires more time, which require less. 5 courses, I'm sure some of them are a lot more difficult, or you have more difficult, right? More difficulty with them. Some probably are easy courses. I don't know. Right? Some probably don't read a lot of study anyway. So you need to decide which are the ones that you need a lot more time and which less. So as an example, I'll just say, let's assume there are 5 courses, and assume that the course A requires the most time, course E requires the least time, right? Or if you think that they're all equally weighted, they're all as tough, well then, give equal weight to all of them, right? So the weighting depends on individuals, of course, right? The next step is you need to do an inventory of the study slots that you have for the week. So let's say each study slot is 1 hour with a 15-minute break, right? Let's say you start at 7 p.m. each day, so you would have at least 3 sessions, maybe 4 even. So if you do 1.5 hours per session, you would have 3. But this way you have 4, okay? So 4 study slots per day, Monday to Thursday, I'll give you 16 slots. Of course, everybody's going to be different. Okay? Everybody's going to be different. On weekends, maybe you say, let's start at 1 p.m. so that in the morning I can sleep in or do whatever, go shopping. So say 1 to 2, 2:15 to 3:15, etc. So in total, over the weekend, you will have 14 slots for the weekend. This is just a sample, okay? You don't have to follow it exactly because everybody's going to be different. You might have other activities going on, right? So 30 slots, let's say. You have a total of 30 slots. It's like doing a budget with your money, right? You have $1,000 a month and that's it. What are you going to do with it? So you need to know how much money you have. So here you need to know how much time you have for the week. Okay? So how about homework? Like I said, if you can, the best time is to look for, try to do the homework before you start your study session. Schedule in your study session as part of your session, or you can find time between classes to do it. You have free slots during the day. Hopefully you can do that. Okay? So now you need to distribute those 30 slots in the proportion required for your 5 courses, right? So the one that's the most difficult, you probably need more time slots compared to the one that is the easiest. Okay? So after you look at that, I mean, this basic algebra, you can figure that out. And then you may want to do some adjustments. Like I said here, be 9 slots for A, 7 for B, 6 for C, 5 for D, and 3 for E, let's say, right? Then you need to spread out the courses to avoid, and also avoid doing back-to-back, right? I have a spreadsheet set out. If you want, I can send it to you as well. So here's one example. Again, everybody's going to be different. So one possible plan is on Monday, I'm going to study subject A, and then I'm going to subject B, and then D, maybe go back to A, but maybe part B or second part of A or something, right? And then Tuesdays, etc. So that overall for the whole week, I would have fill in my 30 slots. Now, it's very important to know what to study for each session. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to study math, and that's it. Study math what? Chapter what? What topic? Write it down so that you know you have time to study them, right? Be very specific if you can. Like I said, try it for a week. Stick to it. By all means, stick to it, right? Don't get distracted by other things. If you can just do it for 1 week, I tell you, you feel so great. You can reward yourself with a cookie or something. Right? Now, after that 1 week, you might say, oh, gee, okay, I need more time for this subject, or less for that one, or I need more time for homework, or whatever. You might need to make an adjustment for the second week. Right? Like I said, usually you probably don't need that. 30 slots, it's a lot in a way, right? So what I normally do is I work backwards. If I know there's going to be a test in 2 weeks' time, I'll study what I need, like I said, weeks ahead, right? I always work back. I will try to find out when the final exams are, so I know that by the time I get to the final exam, I will have covered everything. So doing this plan is critical. Another thing that you need to do is take notes on the points that are not clear. You study the topic and you come across something, it's just not clear how to do it, write it down. Don't spend another 2 hours trying to figure that out, right? If you really get stuck there, write it down, what are the problems. Next day come and see areas, if it's a math problem or something, right? You need to ask questions. You need to write down questions you need to ask, right? So, and then you need to review the topics later, etc. Now, this is based on research. Longer intervals are generally more effective. Instead of studying like every minute or whatever, or intervals of half a day, longer intervals help retention better, apparently. So if you want to remember, say, retain it for 2 weeks, your interval should be around 1.5 days or so. Okay? 1 to 2 days, roughly. If you want to retain for 5 years, right, you have to review it every 6 to 12 months. That's a general rule they find, right? About 10 to 20% of the interval. Okay? Depends on how long you want to retain it for. So if you review it every year, you probably retain it for 10 years. Like profs, you know? They teach a course every year, right? So you have to remember for the next year. So do it 1 year at a time. They still remember after 10 years. No big deal. Okay, so here's a layout, for example. Let's say for starting next week, right? You should do this plan today, I would say. Try it. Even if you know you don't want to follow it, you don't want to believe me, but at least try it, just to get a sense of how much time you actually have available, right? If you find that you don't really have a lot of time available, maybe it's time to drop a course. Then you know that you're doing too much. Maybe you have to drop your girlfriend or boyfriend or something, right? It's it, no time for you, right? You have to take tough decisions, you know? Okay, so here, let's say this is during the school day, and like I said, try and figure out when you have free slots that you can do something. Okay? Also, read your notes before you go to class and read it right after as well. Just take maybe 5 minutes just to get a sense of what's going on, right? That's very important as well, so that you're prepared for the class. So here's an example. I don't know what time you have dinner. I'm just giving an example. I say I'm done by dinner 6 o'clock, or I have dinner at 6. I'm going to start studying at 7. So turn off your phones, turn off everything, go to a quiet place, study. Say Monday, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I'm going to study subject A. I'm going to study chapter 1A, whatever that is. Could be, you know, calculus or something, some special technique or whatever. You need to write down exactly what you're going to study. Study for 1 hour. Concentrate hard during that 1 hour. How to do that will be the next part. Okay? Then you take your 15-minute break. During that time, you really need to take a break. You know, get out, walk around, get some fresh air, skip around, play with the dog, go for a walk, whatever. Like Dr. Lye said, you need the oxygen into your brain, right? And then you come back, this is another subject, right? And then, so that sequence. Now, personally, I never go to bed after midnight. Maybe some of you can't do it, right? Since I'm a little young kid, I just can't. If I go after midnight, the next day I'll be a wreck, right? So I always go before midnight. Whether it's exam, during exam period, I go even earlier. I'll sleep even earlier. Then I'll dream of all the questions. It's true. Amazing. Then, so you follow this religiously. You have to do that, right? And then when you come to Friday night, well, that's it, free. You don't have to do anything. And you don't have to feel guilty because you have planned that. Okay? And similar process. It seems like there's a lot of studying, right? I said, if you really need to succeed, you really need to plan your time. You have to use this technique. I mean, if you're doing well, maybe you can relax a bit, right? You might say, okay, Wednesday night, for me it will be like, oh, I have to go and play my squash league game, right? So maybe during this period, I'm at the squash court, and then I come back and study. Or certain weekends, I have to go and with my society or something. I mean, you have to schedule it. So you need to really discipline yourself, but don't be too ambitious, right? Start your schedule early. Today is a good day to start. Now that you know the technique, it's a good day to start. Don't be discouraged by minor setbacks, because there will always be days where you say, we just have to make adjustment. When it's time for the break, make sure you take the break. Okay? And you need to use effective technique to study, which is the next step. Don't get distracted. As you can see, there's quite a lot of time in a week. Of course, there's sacrifice to be made, right? So it's very critical to know exactly how much time you have and how many time slots you have in a week so that you can make best use of it. So, effective studying technique. Luckily, there's only one. There are many evaluated by all these psychologists, right? But there's only one that really stood out. I mean, two. One is the planning, distributed practice. And the second one is self-testing. Believe it or not. You need to be always testing yourself. They've done a lot of experiments about testing, right? They've done, like, they give materials to a class to read and reread many times, but not test it. Another class, they give them to read and then they test them. A month later, they'll test them again. The class that was not tested don't remember most of the things they have read, although they've read it many times. But the one that's been tested, most of them will get it because they've been tested before. They have to force themselves to recall stuff when you're tested. Strange, but it works. So you have to constantly test yourself. Okay? So self-testing and distributed practice, which we just talked about, right, are the most effective method for learning and retention. So you can self-test using flashcards. It could be digital. There are many apps. You can create your own flashcard, right? There's one called Flashcard Machine. There's another one called Quizlet or something. Or you remember in kindergarten, right? You get tested all the time, right? That's why you remember all your alphabets and your letters so well, because your teacher is constantly testing you with the flashcard. It's a very effective technique even for engineering courses, right? I used that a lot in high school as well. Now, a really good method to study as well is to study with a partner. One or two partners sometimes. It's really good. Because you're forced to, you're sort of forcing each other to study. Right? The other thing is that you can always quiz each other. And the person that always does the explaining is the person that actually learns more. Okay? So, more to this. I'll come back to that again later. Okay, taking...
give me 5 to 10 minutes out?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. I want to give the student panel.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
So, taking good notes is very important as well. How to take good notes. Now, there's a very good note-taking system called the Cornell note-taking system. I'm going to talk about it, but you can Google it, and there will be a million hits on this technique. Go on YouTube, there will be a million videos explaining how it works. Again, research has shown that this is a very good technique. Okay? You got questions, you ask, keywords, key stuff that you take notes, and summary of your notes. Anyway, you can look at it yourself. Ineffective technique. You'll be surprised that one of the techniques that don't work is highlighting. So don't waste your money at Staples buying highlighters. Those techniques don't work. Okay? Highlighting and then rereading it, useless. Research has shown it. Okay? But if you highlight and then you translate your highlighted text into test notes or for testing, or flashcards or for self-testing, then it becomes a lot more effective. But just highlighting itself is useless. Okay? Rereading also fare very poorly. Like I said, if you're not tested, you don't remember. You can read it a million times because nobody's going to test you. You don't really care, right? Then there are other methods. Again, it doesn't work that well. There are only two methods: distributed practice and self-testing. So, I find our most useful tip is study with the intention of teaching it to somebody else. That's the best way. Whenever I study now, I want to read anything, I say, oh, I need to teach it to somebody else. then you study with a totally different mindset, okay? Because you need to think of, oh, I'm sure the guy going to ask me this question or that question. Then you start studying in more detail, right? Because you try to answer the question, right? So this simple change in mindset is very effective. If you have pressed for time, there's a way to cheat. If you have pressed for time, read the question at the back of the book first. Say, well, what are you going to ask me before you study it, right? That also helps. So you need to constantly create questions and ask yourself. And you can't answer it, ask somebody who knows, right? So, study in small chunks, study consistently, study and constantly test yourself. Get good sleep, reward yourself, exactly all other psychologists suggest. Exercise regularly, right? Work hard, play hard, eat well, sleep well. Simple. Okay, you need to make sacrifices. That's the main thing. You can't have everything. Right? Like Newfoundland, beautiful place, but sometimes the weather sucks, right? You just can't have everything. Okay, but if you plan ahead, you don't feel guilty. Less stress. So anyway, the summary is just telling you that there are two things only. Plan your study well. Self-testing is key. Take notes, question yourself, always. Don't underline or highlight. But if you want to highlight, make sure you translate that into notes, then you can ask questions. Okay? Now, if you're interested in the research, like I said, I provided the references. Like I said, they are fairly new, believe it or not. And one of the latest one is 2014. It's a book by this bunch of education psychologists, Making It Stick. How do you make things stick in your brain? It's basically exactly just elaborate all these studies. So they have to investigate all this stuff. Only these two actually are the most effective. The rest are rereading and highlighting the words. Don't do it. Any questions? So the handout with Dr. Lye out.